The Tories are going back to school. After two shattering general election defeats, now, under a media spotlight, they're trying to listen more, to hear the millions who've drifted away or never thought twice about this once popular party.
Who's got any questions or you want to ask me?
Ian Duncan Smith, who's only been their leader since September, has been accused of being too old-fashioned, too right-wing, to worry Tony Blair. Today in Birmingham, listening to school students, talking to businessmen, he tried to prove them wrong. He'd started, he said, on the most far-reaching renewal of Tory policies for 25 years.
So our efforts will be focused on solving the crisis in our public services. The health service that makes people afraid to fall sick. Schools that deprive millions of children of the opportunities that a first-class education offers. A transport system that makes travelling in or between our cities an ordeal.
But this new Tory thinking didn't simply mean a few twiddles and tweaks.
We will conduct ourselves in opposition as we mean to conduct ourselves in government. Honest, principled politics is important because we trust people. We know the importance of persuading them to trust us. Thank you.
Speeches, of course, are relatively easy to make. Ian Duncan Smith said about 4 months ago that he'd be judged as a leader within 4 months. So the harder question is, what policies have the Conservatives actually changed up to now? Answer, a surprisingly large number, including chucking out many ideas central to William Hague's appeal last year. Then the Tories fought the election on a tax-cutting policy. Now they say better public services must come first. Once they championed hereditary peers. Now they want to scrap the Lords entirely and replace them with a mostly elected Senate. The old rhetoric on crime and punishment has been ditched in favour of talk about a neighbourly society. Sounds familiar? These and other changes, more open on female equality and gay rights, sound a bit like Michael Portillo's platform, rejected by the Tories last year as too flaky and dangerous. Perhaps only a hardliner like Mr. Duncan Smith could move so far, so fast. And he has to. This week, even one of his senior lieutenants said many voters thought the party was racist, sexist, homophobic and anti-youth.
The party's moved on. We're OK. Thank you.
There's no detail yet, but he's on the move, without some heavy baggage.
And Andrew Marr joins me now from outside the Conservative Central Office. Andrew, how radical a move towards the centre ground is Ian Duncan Smith making?
Well, I think the real questions, the hard questions, are about tax and spend. How big do the Conservatives think the state should be? How high should taxes be? And therefore, what really do they want to do about the welfare state? Labour is saying, look, these were the people who privatised the railways. We're trying to save the railways. We're trying to save the NHS. They'd privatise it. And in the end, the Conservatives have a lot more questions to answer on those issues. But when it comes to social issues, their general attitude, they've been through a kind of, I suppose, near-death experience with this general election result, and they have emerged from that in many ways reformed, much more changed than many people, including me, expected, and looking again towards the future.
Now, I hear that Tony Blair caused the flutter earlier by hinting there was life after number 10.
Yes, his future. A very rare glimpse from Tony Blair about what he might be thinking about in terms of his own future. He was speaking earlier on to Radio 5 Live.
You must have a thought in the back of your mind about what you're going to do next. You must sometimes be thinking, what's the game plan here?
You're probably right, Peter, but the one thing I think that would be extremely, I mean, as long as you don't mind me saying this to you, it would be foolish of me is to share it with you just quite at this moment.
Was this a slip by the Prime Minister, Andrew, or was he just trying to wind us all up?
Well, it's an interesting slip, I think. I mean, he's 48. He could go on for a very long time if the voters allow him to. I think his preference is to surprise us. He would like to leave this job when he's on and up, if he can find a suitable up, and go off and do something entirely different. He was very impressed when Paddy Ashdown left the Lib Dems unexpectedly. He'd quite like to do the same. My own guess is he'd like to fight the next election, win it, and then go shortly afterwards.
Andrew Marr, thank you. There was a surprise fall in retail sales last month, according to government figures. Sales for December were down 0.3% compared to November, but they were still nearly 6% higher than in the same period a year ago. Millions of people are paying too much for their electricity, according to a new report by MPs. The Public Accounts Committee has criticised utility companies for making it difficult for customers to change suppliers. It also wants regulators to make it easier to compare companies' prices and services. A magistrate has been jailed for 5 years after being found guilty of possessing 8 homemade bombs with intent to endanger life. Oxford Crown Court was told that Jonathan Wilkes prepared the devices in order to attack his former lover's boyfriend. International representatives are meeting in Thailand to discuss how to stamp out a dramatic rise in heroin production in the so-called Golden Triangle, the remote valleys linking Burma, Thailand and Laos. Experts estimate opium production there has more than doubled in the past year, producing about 100 tons of heroin, much of which makes its way to Britain. From Thailand, Clive Myrie reports.
A Thai military helicopter soars high above a stretch of jungle as beautiful as it is notorious. We're looking down on what's known as the Golden Triangle, an area about the size of Switzerland linking Burma, Laos and Thailand. Our gunner keeps a watchful eye. The drug lords here have the capability to shoot us down. It isn't long before we come across their handiwork. Opium poppy fields, clearly visible, pockmarking the jungle. On the ground, we get a closer look. The Thai army claims drug barons are now ordering local farmers to grow more opium poppies to dominate the global heroin market. Afghanistan was the world's largest heroin producer, supplying up to 90% of the drug on Britain's streets. Recent events there have cut production dramatically, and drug lords here in the Golden Triangle want to plug the gap.
New techniques are being used to grow more poppies. Farmers now use fertilizers and pesticides, and they are now irrigating the land using sprinklers, so the planting season is much longer.
Smashing the power of the drug lords here is a top priority for the Thai government. But it's not easy.
The destruction of this field of opium poppies is a tiny victory in the war against drugs here. The Golden Triangle covers a vast area, impossible to monitor completely. That spells bad news for Western Europe and the UK.
The Thai military has of late stepped up patrols and surveillance. This woman told me the cost of a fix had recently gone up because the Thai army were more active in the area, affecting supplies.
This is the famous Golden Triangle.
But the myriad of ways in which heroin can leave the region has left many in the international community worried.
There is certainly a risk that Southeast Asia, once again, will play a more important role for the supply to Western Europe and United Kingdom.
Heroin is a scourge that's ruined many lives. Afghanistan used to be the major culprit. Now it's the drug lords of the lands of the Golden Triangle who want to increase their profits from the misery of others. Clive Myrie, BBC News, in northern Thailand.
Well, now back to the breaking news that 5 people have been killed and dozens wounded in a bomb attack at a dance hall in Israel. Jeremy Cook joins us from Jerusalem with the latest. Jeremy.
Peter, this attack happened in Hadera, north of Tel Aviv, in a wedding hall. Police sources are telling us that a would-be Palestinian suicide bomber tried to get into that hall but was spotted by security guards. There was a confrontation and a struggle, and during that it's reported that the attacker got out a hand grenade and threw it into the middle of the people who were celebrating. As you say, between 4, perhaps 5 people have been killed and at least 25 are reported to have been injured. It is once again a very serious episode, and this coming after at least 3 Israelis have been killed over recent days. And it does suggest that after a period of relative calm since mid-December, when both sides agreed on something like a ceasefire, that things are going back to the tit-for-tat violence we've seen over the last 15 months or so. It looks pretty bad here tonight. Details still coming in, but certainly Ariel Sharon, the Israeli Prime Minister, will be considering a military response to what's happened here tonight.
Jeremy Cook, thank you. Here, 3 patients have died after contracting salmonella at a hospital in Glasgow. The source of the outbreak is still being investigated, but the Victoria Infirmary thinks a patient brought it into one of the wards.
The 3 men who died caught the salmonella infection from another patient who was admitted to Ward 7 at the Victoria Infirmary. All were described as elderly and frail. One was 74-year-old Rodolfo Ionta, and hospital staff said their sympathies were with his family. But health campaigners say they want an inquiry.
We must find out what it is that's caused it and get it all resolved as quickly as we can, because it causes all sorts of concern, consternation, fear.
The hospital authorities and public health officials say there have been no further cases for 7 days. They're examining whether poor hygiene on the ward contributed to the outbreak.
It's difficult to say for sure that was not the case. We would be concerned if that was what happened. We are reinforcing the need to maintain, as I say, the most scrupulous of hygiene measures.
The hospital says the salmonella outbreak is at an end, but it has confirmed that a further 12 wards here tonight are closed to admissions because of the outbreak of a less serious but much more contagious virus. It has led to the cancellation of nearly 40 operations, but no patients' lives are said to be at risk. Andrew Castle, BBC News at the Victoria Infirmary in Glasgow.
A volcano is erupting tonight in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, causing widespread chaos and driving thousands of people from their homes. It's taking place near the town of Goma on Congo's border with Rwanda. Eyewitnesses who fled said molten lava has entered the town.
The whole sky is red, yellow, green, and you see the red lava streaming through the town, and each and every house that has been touched by the lava is on fire, and 50% of the town is under lava now. So, well, it must be an inferno now.
There's been a liberal dose of romance around the House of Commons today as Charles Kennedy announced his engagement to his girlfriend Sarah Curling.